What if the man everyone feared was the only one brave enough to save her life? In the wide plains of Montana Territory in 1882, Eleanor Bennett stood alone against a world that refused to show her mercy. She was 29, a widow with chestnut hair and steady green eyes, living on a homestead that seemed to break a little more each day. Her husband Thomas had died 3 years earlier in a wagon accident, leaving her with debts, failing land, and neighbors who believed a woman had no right to manage property without a man. Every day was a fight. Every sunrise reminded her that survival came at a cost she was running out of strength to pay. On a September evening, a storm rolled over the mountains like an angry beast. Winds ripped through the valley. Lightning split the sky again and again, lighting her broken fields in harsh white flashes. Eleanor barely had time to get the cattle into the barn before the storm slammed into her homestead with full force. The roof of her dairy house, the only building that still brought in money, tore apart under the violent wind. Shingles flew like thrown stones. Rain poured inside, as if the sky itself was trying to drown her hopes. Sitting alone in the small cabin that night, listening to the storm destroy everything she had worked to keep alive, Eleanor cried for the first time in months. She knew she didn't have the money to fix the roof. Without repairs, she would lose her home within 8 weeks. And Joshua Thornton, the richest and most feared man in the region, already waited like a vulture to buy her land for far less than it was worth. When dawn finally came, the damage felt worse than the storm. The dairy house roof was gone. The wooden walls were soaked and cracked. Her equipment was ruined. Where she once made butter and cheese to survive, there was now nothing but a shattered shell. She didn't cry again. She simply sat in the ruin, staring at the pieces of her life, unable to imagine how she would rebuild. That was when she heard footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps along the muddy path. She looked up and froze. A tall, thin man walked toward her with the steady steps of someone who had traveled far. His skin was sun-browned, his long black hair tied loosely behind him, and his clothes were patched and worn so thin they looked ready to fall apart. A small leather pack hung over his shoulder, likely holding everything he owned. He stopped several yards away, careful not to approach too fast. His dark eyes held a depth that made her heart jump. They carried hunger, pain, and something she hadn't seen in anyone for a long time: quiet dignity. He was a mountain man, a frontier wanderer, a man settlers whispered about with fear and mistrust, yet he stood there as gentle as a prayer. "Ma'am," he said in clear English with a soft frontier accent, "I saw your roof is gone. I can fix it." Eleanor rose slowly. Hiring a stranger, a mountain man no less, would bring trouble. The settlement already treated her as if her decisions were foolish, and mountain men were seen as enemies. But when she looked at him closely, she saw something she understood too well. A person who had lost more than he could ever say. "How much do you charge?" she asked, though she knew she couldn't pay much. "3 meals a day while I work," he answered, "and a place to sleep, nothing more." The honesty in his voice hit her harder than the storm had. The men in town demanded more money than she could ever afford, but this man only asked for food and shelter. "Do you really know how to repair roofs?" she asked. He nodded with quiet pride. "My people build homes that stand through storms far worse than this. And I worked construction at Fort Benton before everything changed." There was pain in those last words, but she didn't ask. She simply met his gaze. "What's your name?" "Jacob," he said. "Jacob Stillwater. It means quiet waters." Eleanor took a breath and made a choice that would change her life forever. "All right, Jacob, you can stay in the barn, and I want the roof finished in 1 week." "It'll be done in 6 days," he replied, and stronger than before. She brought him inside and gave him the first hot meal he had likely eaten in days. As he ate, she caught glimpses of the man behind the hunger, steady hands, disciplined movements, and eyes that watched everything with calm understanding. Neither of them knew that a single choice had just tied their fates together. Later that afternoon, when the settlement gossip Martha Preston spotted a strange man working on Eleanor's roof, she ran straight to Joshua Thornton with the news. By sunset, the real storm was already on its way. and it would be far more dangerous than anything the sky had brought the night before. What would you do if the one person willing to save your life became the reason everyone wanted to destroy you? By the second morning, Eleanor woke to the sharp, rhythmic taps of a hammer. She hurried to the window and saw Jacob already working on the roof. His movements were sure, clean, and steady. He wasn't guessing. He knew exactly what he was doing. The thin man she had fed the night before suddenly looked like someone shaped from the mountains themselves. When she brought breakfast outside, she found him wiping sweat from his brow. "Where did you learn all this?" she asked while he ate. "My father sent me to the mission school as a boy," Jacob answered. "The priests taught me to read, to build, to map land. They said I had good hands." "And what happened?" she asked gently. Jacob's face grew shadowed. "War happened," he said. "War always takes everything." After breakfast, Eleanor stood quietly watching him work. Jacob wasn't simply repairing the damage. He was rebuilding the entire structure with angles and supports she had never seen before. Each board fit with perfect precision. Each nail went exactly where it belonged. "You're doing much more than we agreed on," she said softly. "A roof should last generations," he replied. "No point in building something halfway." The days passed, and Eleanor began to notice things about him, little things that made her heart tighten. He handled animals with surprising gentleness. He knew healing herbs better than most doctors. At night, he sat alone in the barn, carving small wooden figures with skill so delicate it felt like magic. Jacob Stillwater was not the savage the settlement claimed mountain men to be. He was something rare, something good. But rumors spread fast, and fear moved even faster. On the fourth day, while Eleanor prepared lunch, she heard the heavy thud of horses approaching. She froze. The voices outside were loud, angry, familiar. Joshua Thornton had come, with 4 men at his back. Her heart raced as she stepped outside. Joshua dismounted with the confidence of a man who believed he owned the entire valley. "We know you have a drifter here," Joshua said loudly, "and we want him gone." "He's repairing my roof," Eleanor replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's all." Joshua scoffed. "That man is a danger, a savage. He'll turn on you the moment you're not looking." Jacob, hearing the commotion, climbed down from the roof. He did not raise his hands. He did not look frightened. He simply stood with calm respect, though his eyes stayed alert. Joshua pointed at him like he was pointing at a disease. "You have one day," he ordered. "If he's still here by noon tomorrow, we'll remove him ourselves." When the men rode away, Eleanor turned to Jacob, expecting fear, but his face was calm. "I can leave tonight," he said quietly. "I won't bring trouble to your door." "No," she said firmly, surprising herself. "You have worked honestly. I won't send you away because of men who judge what they don't understand." Jacob looked at her with a softness she didn't expect. "Why risk so much for a stranger?" he asked. Eleanor didn't have an answer until it rose from somewhere deep and painful. "Because I know what it feels like," she whispered. "To be judged before people even know your heart." That night, Jacob lay awake in the barn, carving a small wooden figure of a woman standing tall with her arms protecting her home. And Eleanor lay awake in her bed, touching the window frame he had repaired, wondering why her heart beat differently now. By the 6th morning, the roof stood complete. Strong, clean, perfect. She had never felt so proud of her home, but when she saw dust rising on the road, her stomach twisted. This time, it wasn't 5 men. It was 15, armed. Joshua was done giving warnings. Jacob stepped down from the roof with slow, steady breaths. "Stay behind me," he murmured. The men formed a half circle. Their rifles glinted under the sun. "Last chance, Bennett," Joshua said. "Send him out, or we take him." Eleanor stepped forward. "You have no right to threaten my home." Joshua's face twisted. "Your husband would be ashamed of you, taking in a savage." That struck her like a slap. Jacob's voice was quiet but firm. "Do not speak of her husband. He was a good man. He sold me food when others refused. He treated my people with respect." A few men shifted uncomfortably. Jacob's calmness frightened them more than anger would have. Joshua raised his voice again, desperate to regain control. "Enough! Take him!" Eleanor ran into her cabin and emerged with Thomas's rifle. "If anyone touches him," she warned, "I shoot." The crowd murmured. Some stepped back. Joshua hesitated. "You won't do it." She cocked the rifle. "Try me." For a moment, time froze. Jacob stepped beside her and gently lowered the barrel with his hand. "No blood will be shed because of me," he whispered. "You have done enough." He turned to Joshua. "I will leave. But remember, this woman showed more honor than any of you." He gathered his few belongings, walked to Eleanor and whispered, "Thank you. You have given me something I thought I lost forever, my worth." "Don't go," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I'll return," he promised softly, "when it is safe." Then he walked away, leaving her heart torn open. The men rode off believing they had won, but destiny had already shifted, because the quiet mountain man they chased away was not who they thought he was. And when he returned, nothing in Montana would ever be the same again. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. What if the man you saved returned not as a wanderer, but as someone powerful enough to change the entire world around you? 4 long weeks passed after Jacob walked away down that dusty road, and Eleanor felt every day like a month. The repaired roof held strong through 2 smaller storms, and each time she looked at it, she felt the memory of his quiet smile. She touched the small wooden carving he had left behind more often than she admitted, the figure of a woman protecting her home. Joshua visited again and again with new offers for her land. Each time, she refused. Something inside her kept whispering that Jacob would return. It made no sense. It was all she had. One night, while she fed the cattle under the full moon, a soft whistle carried through the cool air. She froze. It was the same melody Jacob used to hum while working, a mountain tune full of longing and memory. She turned and saw him emerge from the shadows of the barn. "Jacob," she breathed, rushing toward him. He caught her in his arms, holding her tightly. The smell of pine and wood smoke filled her heart with peace. "I told you I'd return," he murmured, but something was different. He wore better clothes, clean and finely woven. His long black hair was tied with a silver clasp that spoke of wealth and status. His eyes were still gentle, but they carried a purpose she hadn't seen before. Inside the cabin, by lantern light, Jacob took her hands. "There's something I must tell you," he said. "Something I should have told you from the start." Her heart tightened. "I'm not just a mountain man looking for work," he continued. "I'm Jacob Stillwater, heir to the Northern Trappers Alliance. My people control the richest trading routes in the entire territory." Eleanor stumbled back. "You're a chief?" "Soon," he said. "I was wandering because I lost my way. My people were losing faith. I wanted to see the world for myself, to understand if peace was still possible." He stepped closer. "And then I found you." Her breath caught. Jacob reached into his pack and unwrapped a piece of soft leather. Inside lay a turquoise and silver necklace, glowing under the lantern like captured sky. Each stone shimmered with life. "This belonged to my mother," he said, "and her mother before her. I give it only to the woman who will be my wife." Eleanor felt her knees weaken. "I'm asking you," he said, kneeling, "to marry me, not because of my title, not because of my land, but because you loved me when I had nothing." Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Jacob, yes." He smiled, relief and joy washing over his face. But that joy didn't last long. The thunder of hooves rolled across the night. Torches flickered through the trees. "They saw me return," Jacob said. "They're coming." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "Jacob, what do we do?" "You stay inside," he said as shouts grew louder. "They want me." "Not you." When he kissed her, the fear in his heart trembled into her own. "I love you," he said softly. "Remember that." Then he stepped out into the moonlit yard. Joshua arrived with 15 armed men, their shadows long and sharp across the ground. "There he is," Joshua growled. "Grab him. Tonight this ends." Jacob raised his hands calmly. "I surrender. Leave Mrs. Bennett out of this." "Oh, no," Joshua spat. "She's part of this now." Quote. Eleanor stepped into the doorway, rifle in hand. "You will not touch him," she said in a voice that shocked even herself. Joshua sneered, but before he could speak, a strange sound echoed through the night. A deep, rhythmic howl rolled across the mountains. The men froze. Horses reared. Fear washed over their faces. Jacob lifted his head with a calm smile. "My people," he said. Figures stepped from the shadows. Silent as the wind, dozens of scouts surrounding the settlers. Their presence was like the mountains themselves rising to protect their own. Then a white horse appeared, carrying a tall man with silver-streaked hair and eyes full of power. Jonathan Blackwater, the legendary mountain chief. He dismounted with grace. "I am Jonathan Blackwater," he said, voice booming in the night, "and the man you threaten is my adopted son and heir." Joshua turned pale. Jonathan held up old treaty documents with official seals. "These lands are ours by law," the chief said. "And my son has chosen this woman with honor. You have no claim here. Leave now, or answer for the threats you have made." The settlers realized the truth. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and dangerously close to starting a war they could never win. Joshua backed away, trembling. "Let's go," he said weakly. The men scattered into the night like frightened cattle. When they were gone, Jonathan approached Eleanor. "You have shown courage few settlers ever have," he told her. "You protected my son. You loved him when you believed he had nothing. For that you have my eternal respect." Eleanor lowered her rifle, breath shaking. Then Jacob came to her and took her hands. "If you'll have me," he said softly, "we will marry under the next full moon." She smiled with tears in her eyes. "I already said yes." 4 weeks later, under silver moonlight, Eleanor Bennett and Jacob Stillwater became husband and wife in the most remarkable wedding Montana had ever seen. Settlers and mountain people stood together for the first time, watching two worlds become one. Their union brought peace where there had been fear. Trade flourished. Friendships grew, and Eleanor, once a lonely widow fighting to keep her home, became the respected wife of a chief and partner in building a new future. Years later, with children running through the fields and the homestead rich with life, Jacob often sat beside her on the porch at sunset. "Imagine if I hadn't come to your door that day," he would say. Eleanor always smiled gently. "You didn't just fix my roof," she answered. "You fixed my life." And Jacob would kiss her hand, knowing she had rebuilt his heart long before he rebuilt her home. Their love became legend, not because of power or wealth, but because it proved that even in the wildest places, compassion can change everything. And one act of kindness can rewrite destiny.